Good afternoon. The House will come to order. All those in the galleries and chambers, please rise. We'll begin our day with a prayer today from Representative Adam Schwadron.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this moment. We are grateful to be able to gather together in this chamber to serve your people and advance your purposes. We ask for your wisdom and understanding so that we may make fair and just laws that reflect your values and bring blessings to all your children. Help us to be humble and selfless in our service, putting aside personal interests for the good of the community. May your spirit of justice, righteousness, and compassion guide us as we deliberate so that our decisions may reflect your will and bring peace and prosperity to our land. To everyone here and throughout our great state, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord's countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his face unto you and give you peace. And together the House says, Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the approval of the House Journal for the 21st day, Thursday, February 9th, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved for the approval for the House Journal for that 21st day, Thursday, February the 9th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to the Journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Journal, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, no. And the ayes have it. You've approved the Journal. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next, we will suspend House Rule 98 so that members may wear apparel honoring the Kansas City Chiefs. And if there are no questions, I move that House Rule 98 be suspended, and I ask for a roll call vote.
Further discussion on the suspension of House Rule 98. Seeing none, the gentleman from Jackson has moved that the House Rule 98 be suspended to allow members to honor the Kansas City Chiefs and their Super Bowl victory while wearing such jerseys under their jackets. All those in favor of suspending House Rule 98, please vote aye. Those opposed, vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everybody voted? Has everybody voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 139 yea, 6 nay, and 5 present, you've approved the suspension of House Rule 98. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be introduction of special guests.
Introduction of special guests. Gentleman from Clay.
Jackson.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Behind me and in front of you in the back gallery, I'd like to introduce to you a group from my home church, St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Independence, Missouri. It's also in District 29, the best district in the state. The parish is located just 5 miles east on I-70 from Arrowhead Stadium, home of the Chiefs. St. Michael's is celebrating its 55th year this year, having served independence since 1967. In the year 2000, they founded their Necessities Pantry, which carries on the long-standing Christian tradition of caring for and providing for the needs of the poor in our community. The continuing purpose of the pantry is to fill the gaps left by government assistance programs by providing personal care items such as toilet paper, deodorant, shampoo, and other hygiene products. We are small but mighty, but last month we served 800 people in our community by providing those kinds of necessities for them, and I would ask that members make them feel welcome today.
Further introductions. Lady from Clay.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, on your left and my right, here between the 4th and the 5th columns, are 2 students from Northwest Missouri State, Jaylee Patel and Nick Bolton. They are members of an incredible program called Grow Your Own. They are studying as part of this program with North Kansas City's Grow Your Own to go back and be teachers at the same school district where they grew up. Please make these future educators feel welcome.
Welcome to the House. Further introductions, lady from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your left and to my right, between the last two columns over here, is a very dear friend of mine. She and I go all the way back to our high school years, and neither one of us realized that we would both end up here in this chamber advocating for a quality of life for Missourians. She is here with the Missouri State Parks Association advocating for our state parks. Her name is Shirley Wolverson, and I would like the body to please give her a very warm welcome.
All the way back to high school. That wasn't that long.
Further introductions. Gentleman from Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your right, or introduction of special guests, excuse me, sir.
Please proceed.
To your right, to my left, between the third and fourth column, representing the 3rd Congressional District, which is made up of 13 counties, and hailing from St. Elizabeth, where his family has lived for 4 generations, I would like to introduce to the body the Honorable Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer.
Welcome to the House, Congressman. One second. Gentleman from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest, please.
Please proceed.
To your right and my left, I'd like to introduce delegates from the Missouri Silver-Haired Legislature. 2023 is the 50th year anniversary of the Silver Legislature, and since 1973, they have successfully worked to represent the needs of more than 1 million residents aged 60 and above. The Missouri Silver-Haired Legislature would like to sincerely and publicly thank all the Missouri legislators here today that are working from the heart to support conscientious public policy for every Missouri citizen. Welcome to the House.
Welcome to the House. Further introduction of special guests. Seeing none, gentleman from Jackson. Lady from Boone, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was a little slow on the draw, so it's my fault, not yours. Introduction of special guests.
Please proceed.
To your right and my left, between the 3rd and 4th column, I have our former colleague, my good buddy and friend, Representative Chuck Basie. Let's give him a big house welcome.
Welcome to the House, Representative. Further introductions. Seeing none, gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be points of personal privilege, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from St. Louis County, District 86, for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not often I get to talk about somebody I know from my hometown of Kansas City. In a lot of ways, as I think back on my political life, he probably inspired me. He was born in 1924. He was adopted by his stepfather, Theron B. Watkins, who was an early local civil rights movement leader. During World War II, Bruce Watkins served in the famed Tuskegee Airmen as a navigator and bombardier with the 99th Pursuit Squadron. I wish Bruce would have told me more about that when I was growing up, because I used to run around with his nephew all the time. We went to grade school and high school together. Following the war, he returned to Kansas City and became a licensed embalmer and funeral director. He worked along his family members at their local funeral business. He was inspired by his stepfather's activism, and he worked with another gentleman I knew, Leon Jordan. And they founded Freedom Incorporated, which a lot of the Kansas City representatives know all about. That group's mission encouraged Black Americans to register to vote, and they supported Black candidates to run for public office. In 1963, Bruce Watkins became the first Black candidate to run and get elected to the Kansas City City Council. His first accomplishment on the council was a proposal for a citywide public accommodation ordinance, 29-153. That success led to his election as the first Black person to serve Jackson County as their circuit court clerk in 1966. In 1975, he was reelected to the city council. He was the first Black candidate to run for mayor of Kansas City in 1978. He lost to a friend of mine also, Richard Berkeley. But right after he lost, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he died. He was a trailblazer. You better believe it. He was an inspiring individual, and he helped young people like me to see the future. I am proud to have known him. It was an honor to have known him. And so I would like for you all to remember Bruce Watkins. And if you travel to Kansas City, you will see a highway with his name on it. And now you'll know why and who it was. Bruce R. Watkins. What a great individual. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be first reading of House bills and joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, would you please read the House bills and House joint resolutions?
House Bill number 1128, introduced by Hayden, an act relating to emergency medical services. House Bill number 1129, introduced by Berger, an act relating to water exportation across state boundaries. And House Bill 1130, introduced by Jones, an act relating to public health with penalty provisions.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I ask you to recognize a lady from St. Louis County for a point of personal privilege.
Lady from the Mahomes District. Oh, gentleman, lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you. Asking for permission to speak at a mic other than my own.
Proceed, lady.
Thank you. 1 week prior to the August election, I found out I had breast cancer. It was devastating news I did not want to hear. However, I was no stranger to hearing those words. My grandmother had 3 daughters. Both my mother and aunt were diagnosed with breast cancer, both at the age of 21. They both passed away from this deadly disease. My aunt had 3 daughters, and 2 of them are breast cancer survivors to this day. My mother had 3 daughters. My sister tested positive for the BRCA1 gene mutation, which means she could too become diagnosed with breast cancer. Instead, she took the Angelina Jolie approach to decrease her chances, and I was first diagnosed with breast cancer in 2010. Today, I stand before this body to share that after 16 difficult rounds of chemotherapy treatments and a great number of surgeries, on Thursday, February 9th, my team of doctors confirmed that no cancer has been detected. Thank you. I said I wasn't going to cry. I am declared in complete remission. I would like to thank my fiance, Antonio Jones, and my daughter, Mackenzie Faith, for being with me each and every step of the way. To my legislative assistant, Cyrus Taylor, you rock. And thank you for all you've done in my absence. Thank you to all of my doctors, nurses, my colleagues, my family, and all of my friends who assured me that I was never alone in this fight. Would you all stand and celebrate with me as I am now a 2-time undefeated breast cancer survivor? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from St. Louis County, congratulations from all of us. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House resolutions. I ask you to recognize former Kansas City Chiefs cheerleader and current Missouri State Representative, the lady from Cass, for a motion on House Resolution 445.
Lady from the Mahomes District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I offer H.R. 445, and I ask that it be read.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Resolution 445. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs are the official professional football team of the state of Missouri, and whereas on February 12, 2023, the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 57 in Glendale, Arizona, and whereas the Chiefs overcame a 10-point deficit at halftime and scored a field goal in the final seconds to win the game, and whereas the Chiefs Super Bowl captains include University of Missouri alumnus Nick Bolton and the season's league and Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes, and whereas the University of Missouri alumnus Nick Bolton led the Chiefs defense with a game-high 9 tackles and scored a touchdown in the second quarter on a 36-yard fumble return. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Missouri House of Representatives, 102nd General Assembly, first regular session, hereby congratulate the entire Chiefs organization on their second Super Bowl win in 4 years. And be it further resolved that the Chief Clerk of the Missouri House of Representatives be instructed to prepare a properly inscribed copy of this resolution for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Representative from Cass.
First, I am thrilled that the Kansas City Chiefs have secured the Lombardi Trophy, and they will be bringing that back home to Missouri. I am grateful for the Hunt family and that the Chiefs decided to relocate from Texas to Kansas City. I'm also thankful for Texas for sending us MVP Patrick Mahomes. I can only assume that Lenny Dawson, Marty Schottenheimer, and many other former Chiefs players were watching last night from heaven. My Kansas City Chiefs roots run very deep. I attended Chiefs games with my grandparents in the old stadium and then at Arrowhead. In high school, I was honored to be part of the Chiefs organization. I have had Chiefs season tickets for over 30 years. I'm proud to say that my son is an even bigger Chiefs fan. In Miami, he rented out a theater so he could watch the game last night. But being a Chiefs fan hasn't always been fun. There were times when we couldn't even give our tickets away. But thankfully, that has all changed, and I still have my season tickets. And through the many decades, the Chiefs have been an economic engine. Just think about all the things that we are making an impact in economics today. And also, they are a source of passion. And that passion brings people together. And the most important thing, being a Chiefs fan is nonpartisan. I'm honored and I'm humbled to offer House Resolution 445.
Lady from Cass, thank you very much. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recommend that we give the Chiefs one more round of applause.
Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be House bills for third reading, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from Jasper for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 14.
Gentleman from Jasper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 14 be third read and passed.
Discussion. The gentleman from Jasper has moved for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute for House Bill 14. Gentleman from Jasper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 14 is one of two supplemental budget requests that we'll see this year. This is for the current fiscal year that we're in, and we had a lengthy debate and discussion on the bill on Wednesday when we perfected the bill. So quickly, Mr. Speaker, this bill includes the 8.7% pay increase for statewide employees. Does not include that increase for elected officials. Additionally, there's some spending authority there for the State Emergency Management Agency and some additional money for the Department of Agriculture to help with black vulture mitigation, and then $20 million to establish a statewide school safety grant program. So with that, Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I would renew my motion.
Discussion. Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I had an amendment that we did not get onto this bill that asked for pay increases for people who provide services to those who live in our home. Perhaps developmentally disabled, perhaps our seniors, perhaps our people living with disabilities who have masters in public policy that have jobs and just need some physical help to get out of bed in the morning and then back into bed at night. Mr. Speaker, I want to know what it's going to take of us before we provide for these communities, for these vulnerable communities in our states. I offer amendments to increase their cost of living very similarly to what we're doing to our state employees. And where I appreciate the budget chair's position that we're not sure what that's going to do to the budget down the line, why are these providers not as important as our state workers? They are providing important, necessary services to the people of this state. These people are not getting raises, and as I mentioned, home and community-based services, direct service providers, and these are people who take care of our developmentally disabled individuals. I want to know what it will take. Will it take 248 people sitting in jail who have been declared incompetent and need to be referred to mental health facilities before they can be competent for trial? Will it take having 248 people in jail before we realize we need to pay these people more? I'm going to say today that answer is no, because that's how many people we have sitting in jail waiting for mental health care. Will it take people sitting in inpatient hospitals? We have 225 of them. We have members of families with developmental disabilities that can sometimes be challenging to care for in our homes. And sometimes there are incidences that require hospitalizations. And families have learned to not discharge their loved one. And they sit in the hospital. And they sit in the hospital waiting for a provider to offer care to this individual out of the hospital. Will it take 225 people sitting in a hospital for us to realize we need to pay these care workers more? I'll say nope, because that's where they are right now. How about providing services for people who live independently and have physical disabilities so they can get to and from work? I'm going to tell you no again. And where this body did something last year that's helpful, we're paying some of those providers more. Here's the little catch. There's a cap of 60% of what we pay nursing home coverage. So you can get 60% of what it costs for you to serve a day in the nursing home. We'll pay for you to have that in the house. Except when we raised the salary of the person providing that service, it decreased the number of hours that they could provide it because we didn't increase that cap. So now we're providing the payer more, the service provider more, but the client is getting less services. So I don't know how this is different than paying our state workers more. I don't know why it's not more important. Why it's more important to pay state workers than these people. Division of Developmentally Disabled has 624 openings right now. The Department of Behavioral Health has 903 openings right now. And look, we actually were on a roll. In July of 21, we had 104% turnover. In July of 22, we only had 53% turnover. December of last year, it went back up to 65%. It's pretty sad when you think 65% turnover is good based on the 104 we had the July before that. So one way we can support these workers in our state is to get them into our budget, and to get them in our budget that pays them a fair rate so they don't leave this challenging work. They love the work, that's why they do it. But there's a point in time when going down the street to Dollar General store, making $21 an hour is a whole lot easier than working with some developmentally disabled individuals that are challenging to work with. It's good work, people have a heart for it, but there's a point in time where you need to pay the bills too. So one day, I hope that day is before our next tax cut, because that will soon be coming to a chamber near you. We can make sure we cover the services of this state that are needed to help with our truly vulnerable populations. Mr. Speaker, I will vote for this bill. We will have budget bills coming before us, and I hope as a body we will consider and understand we need to pay these other people good wages so our vulnerable citizens are taken care of. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? Gentleman from St. Louis City.
To speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So first of all, I support this bill. I'll be voting for it. And I'm glad to see that it's moving quickly. This is something the governor asked for and that we do know is an emergency, that a lot of these dollars get out the door. Specifically, the pay raises, I want to echo the sentiments of the lady from St. Louis County. These are much, much needed raises. But I also want to stress what the governor himself said to us when he presented these to us in his State of the State, that this is a baseline and really the bare minimum of what's needed. And if we really want to address the problem we have with our state workforce, we need to go a lot further. For those of you that don't sit on the budget committee, I do think the example that the lady from St. Louis County just mentioned of the Dollar General is an important one that we heard from the governor's office as they presented this budget. Some of you may remember this past summer, we had a special session. And during that, on the first day of that special session that the House came together, we had a hearing in Budget Committee with the Department of Mental Health, where they talked about the crisis, the absolute crisis that we are facing in our state with our mental health services, primarily because of staffing. You heard some of the numbers that the lady mentioned. Those are real. Long wait lists for services. Huge understaffing. But something that really jumped out at me is that when the budget director presented this to us, this request for an 8.7% increase in pay, he said that their main competitor, again, just like it was this summer for these employees, is the Dollar General in some of our communities with the highest vacancy rates. Well, that was the case last summer. And what he told us is that the Dollar General, since that time, the Dollar General in Fulton, the warehouse, they've actually raised their pay by 21% just since then, when we already had an emergency. Mind you, that's after our pay raises last year went into effect. So here we are with 8.7, when in that same amount of time, Dollar General's pay went up by over 20%, and they're a primary competitor. How do we expect to address this worker shortage if we keep falling behind? Now, the amendment that the lady offered last week also talks not just about this group, the state workers that we're not giving a big enough raise right now to, but also the other workers in our state that rely on state funding to do their jobs. These are absolutely essential services, and they, just like our state workers, are facing competitive jobs that wages have gone up. They're facing inflation that has raised their cost of living. We have to address this crisis. Now, the budget chair mentioned, well, we have to make sure we do it in a responsible way. I certainly agree. I mean, we have to make sure we have ongoing funding. Well, in this summer, when we talked about this emergency, we passed what was billed as the largest tax cut in the history of our state because, guess what? The folks in this chamber felt that we have enough money ongoing to afford a $1 billion a year cost fiscal note. If we have enough money for that, surely we have enough money for our budget to keep up with inflation as well. Now, our revenue has increased dramatically. A big part of that is inflation. If costs of goods go up, if wages go up, income tax revenue goes up and sales tax revenue goes up. But that also means the things we spend our money on has to go up too. 8.7 is a start. It's not enough to keep up. But if we're not even addressing a raise at all for the folks that aren't just state workers but still are part of our budget, we're falling behind elsewhere. Now, last week, on a separate bill, we talked a lot about how some of us have been pleading year after year to address things like mental health services, things like children's division, things that investments in resources that actually address the root causes of violent crime. This is where we do that. And we need a lot more than this to do it. This is where we actually address our challenges with safety. Now, I appreciate that there is also a $20 million line item in here for school safety grants. That's a good thing. We don't really know how it'll get spent yet, but I hope that it is the way that the governor presented it to us. That's good. But look, folks, you heard me talk about the school shooting in my district last year in October. We're going to have more of those. And turning our schools into prisons or castles, frankly, it's not going to stop people from getting inside. And until we do something about the root causes of why the violence is happening in the first place, this $20 million isn't going to go very far. So I just have to, on the record, plead one more time for you all to listen and actually join us in trying to address some of these problems in a real way. And yes, that real way is going to cost a lot of money. But we've got a rare opportunity right now in our budget where we have unprecedented amounts of money sitting in our state coffers. It's time we use it. Please listen to those of us that represent communities that are facing the bulk of these problems, instead of continuing to just tell us the problem was ours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, gentleman from Jasper, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 14 is a relatively straight and to-the-point bill. As we have often heard over the years, our friends on the other side of the aisle criticize us for not spending enough on each category. In this case, it's employee worker pay or social services or school safety programs. Want to point out to the body that when I started here, 2017 was my first year. The state budget was less than $30 billion. The governor's recommendations this year are over $50 billion. And so we have to make trade-offs. Unfortunately, we can't spend our way out of all society's problems. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for the body's support here. We will continue to work on the next budget, and I appreciate the body's support. Thank you.
The gentleman from Jasper has renewed his motion for the passage of House Committee Substitute for House Bill 14. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Mr. Clerk, please close the board. Wait. By your vote of 151 yes, 2 no, and 1 present, you have passed House Committee Substitute for House Bill 14. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be announcements.
Announcements. Now I got to get it. Gentleman from Clay.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, announcement.
Proceed.
Your Special Committee on Government Accountability will reconvene in Hearing Room 5. That is a change. So Hearing Room 5, Special Committee on Government Accountability, upon adjournment.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Special announcement.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a special announcement that pitchers and catchers reported to spring training, and I'm sure I speak for the entire room when I say go Cards.
Gentleman from Lewis.
Announcement, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Your subcommittee on budget for ag appropriations will meet in Hearing Room 3 at 5 o'clock.
Gentleman from Osage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An announcement, Sportsman's Caucus venison stew that was scheduled for Wednesday has been rescheduled for a future date. We'll let you know. And Conservation Natural Resources Committee meeting immediately following adjournment.
Gentleman from Cape Girardeau.
Mr. Speaker, an announcement.
Proceed.
Your Committee on Pensions will meet in the morning at 8:30. It's been predetermined to be the room down there. I think it's number 5, but we'll double check. Thank you.
Gentleman from Howell.
Announcement.
Proceed.
Your Committee on Judiciary will meet in 10 minutes in Hearing Room 7.
Seeing no further announcements, gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Upon return, members should be prepared to debate House Committee substitutes for House Bills 640, 184, and 7029. And with no other business before the body, I ask that the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m., February 14th, 2023.
The gentleman from Jackson has moved that the House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The House is adjourned.